Welcome to the Real Estate Investors Roundtable. This is where we have unfiltered interviews with real investors that are active in the market today. I'm your host, Rob the House Guy, and this is the exact format that I wish that I'd had when I got started over 20 years ago. Today, we're very blessed to have a couple awesome guests with us. We're going to be talking all about property management, and we're talking about self-management versus using a professional property management team. We have Andy Morris, longtime friend, been around the Cleveland market for almost 2 decades, and he runs a big property management company called Realty Trust Services. Welcome, Andy.
Hi. Great to be here.
And of course, our longtime friend of the show is Gary Thomas. You may have seen him in some other episodes. And if it's the houses that he doesn't own, it's probably just the ones you do. He owns the rest of the stuff in America, and he self-manages. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
So a lot of people are afraid of rental properties because of the management. They don't want to get the calls about the toilets, the tenants, the trash. And it's everyone's favorite story when they're getting ready to buy one. It's like, well, my uncle had rental properties and he'd get calls at 3 a.m. to come fix his water tank. So they just say no. So the next way to solve this would be to have someone else taking those calls. So Andy, you being the professional, the person that I can hire to take those calls, what is the benefit to that?
Well, I think, number one, you're looking for a lifestyle, you know? So we don't just offer management services. The way we look at it is we're looking to deliver peace of mind. So there's an emotional buffer from all the BS that tenants try to bring to you, to try to manipulate you and all those things. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Oftentimes we save people money because we have certain experience that obviously eventually you're going to get that experience if you do it long enough. But, you know, you can go into a market that you don't even understand. Hopefully you get someone to help you choose the right houses. But you don't have to understand the intricacies of the day-to-day. And you can have somebody who does handle that. And it's going to save you a lot from that perspective if you don't understand it.
So you're the buffer for the out-of-town investor that might be buying in your market, and you're handling all the minutia on day-to-day. Mm-hmm. On the flip side here with Gary, you're living right in town with your tenants. You're living next door, well, maybe not next door.
Behind them, in one case.
In one case. You're living close to your tenants, and you're very involved. What are the advantages to you being that involved versus using a management company?
Well, I think one of the first things to start is I think people that buy real estate really need to manage it themselves just to get a taste for it, to see if they like it or don't like it, and also see what he's talking about, tenants trying to manipulate you, you know, the different repair aspects, that type of thing. Because a lot of times we do both. We have a management service for out-of-town investors. And these people, their expectations are just unrealistic as to what a manager is going to do. Well, they want, you know, to fix the water heater. Well, I want 3 quotes and, 3 estimates, and I would check their, their union card and to see if they've got their insurance up the thing. It's like, it's already fixed, and if it's $35, right? I'm going to get you 3 quotes for $35. And so I think sometimes their expectations are not realistic as to what they think a property manager does. So I really think it's good for them to get a taste, and then if they like it, you know, they can certainly save some money by doing it themselves. If they don't like it, they can go the other way.
Would you agree that expectations with owners are out of control? And if so, how do you set expectations to be in line with where you are so you don't kill each other?
So I would say that absolutely. There's a reason we're all laughing.
Yes.
Because we can all picture in our mind some of the things that people have come to us with, you know, it's like, and you don't even realize how off it is until you've been there. I actually sometimes recommend the same thing. I know we're supposed to be, you know, but it's so much easier when someone's been there to explain to them why it was so important that we dispatched immediately rather than had 3 people in and out of a house to get the best price. Meanwhile, everybody's wasting their time, and so someone's gonna have to be paying for that, right?
Right.
And the tenant's so pissed that their important things not taken care of that they're getting ready to move out. They're about to have a vacancy because of all this because they wanted to save 10 cents. They're gonna have a vacancy that costs them whatever,
right,
thousands.
We're going pretty deep right now, starting out. into the world of repairs. It sounds like everything is centered around repairs, getting 3 quotes and nickel and diming and insurances and everything else. I know how I handle things with our portfolio and with my investors' portfolio, but I'd like to hear from 2 perspectives. If I'm a tenant living in one of your houses, and let's use the furnace goes out, again, for instance, how are you handling that versus how you're handling that? So I'm a tenant, my furnace went out, Andy. When can you get out and fix it? It's 3 a.m.
It's not going to be tonight.
Well, we have a matrix of what's really urgent, right? And this comes to sometimes experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're sometimes you freak out when someone calls you if you've never done this before. But we have a specific matrix that says what is the urgency of it based on what they're requesting and when, right? So the first thing is that if it's 3 a.m. in the morning, we have a call center. So it's not, you're not going to actually talk to Andy Morris. There's going to be a call center that's specifically for us anyways, and you may have your own systems. Obviously you do. But we have a call center that's specifically for maintenance. And it's designed to at least answer the call so they feel like they've been heard. And then depending on a few specific things like, hey, is this an active leak? And can we coach them to like turn it off at the main, right? But if that can't happen, we do really need to actually dispatch because that could cause big issues in terms of damage to the property, potential health hazards, things like that. If it's a fire or an active leak, and maybe like on the coldest day of the year and your furnace is out, that might be like an immediate dispatch in the middle of the night.
Before I dive over to you here, I want to continue down this road with you for a second. So let's pretend you dispatch. Sure. And we're going to get rid of my furnace problem now and go back. Let's go to a plumbing problem because that's the road we're going down. And they shut it off, and you had to send out a professional plumber at 3 a.m., and I'm sure that was $500 or $600, and that was a call that you made.
Sure.
What happens if that landlord doesn't have the $500 or $600 to pay that service provider?
Well, you remember we talked about setting expectations. We're not going to work with someone if they don't have reserves. Okay, so they don't have to have that reserves with me, but I have to have some confidence that you're going to have reserves. And really, our ideal person has some experience. It goes back to the original point you made. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have people that have done this before. You know, they have an investor's mindset. So if you don't have experience, you're not going to have the right expectations in that. We try to set those. We have a lot of education videos that I've made personally, things like this, that we give to people so they can understand, hey, you need to have these all in a row if you're going to even work with us, you know?
That's a great point, Andy. Now, coming over here, Gary, now we've heard all about he has reserves and, going ahead and dispatching and spending other people's money. How does it work for you in your world? Because this is your dollar you're spending. How do you treat the repairs?
Well, it's the same way. We prioritize. If the person's furnace is going out, nobody's going over there at 3 a.m. Tell them, you got an electric stove or gas oven, turn it on, just leave it down for a few hours just till the morning emergency. That's going to burn the house down overnight. And then we do try to get somebody out there right away. I mean, the best thing in this business is to keep good tenants. And that's how you keep good tenants, is doing repairs promptly when they require them being promptly. So they've got a water leak, we advise them to shut off the water. Same thing, the furnace, our furnace guy first thing in the morning, typically we can get them out that day, get their heat back on unless there's a parts required that's going to be overnight. And that's a different thing, you're just out of your control. But we do the same thing. You have to prioritize, and of course you got to pay for it.
So we keep doing a lot of talk. We're sending someone out. We're sending this person out, this guy out. Who are we sending out? Are you guys jumping in the yellow pages? Do you have employees at the management company? Are you using subs? Who's using what?
Well, we have a list of subs that we use for the bigger stuff. We also have a repair crew of 2 or 3 guys that handle most of the minor problems. So plumbing leak or a ABC drain, if it's a drain problem, we call them. Our furnace guys, much cheaper than using like a normal furnace company because he works for us all the time. So we do have contractors we use over and over again that we have much better pricing than we well, we pass on to me that I get saving on that the regular public can't use.
Right. How about you? Who do you have, Andy?
Sure. So we actually have a maintenance company. So most of our stuff is dispatched through our own company. And part of that is so that we can control more of the experience. To your point, it's important to keep those tenants.
So when you're dispatching your own maintenance company, are you upcharging through your management company for your maintenance, or they're just paying whatever it is?
Yeah, we don't. So to be clear, having the maintenance company is real expenses, real potential liabilities. And so we have to pay the bills and keep the lights on.
Right.
There's a profit made for that, obviously. So that being said, we're not double profiting.
Okay.
We're not
Perfect.
upcharging on our own people.
Gotcha.
If an owner chooses to use an outside contractor, we prefer that they be vetted or allow us to vet them. We will use their contractors to a degree depending on the situation, and there is a 10% charge on top of that because we have to manage an outside person. It takes actually more time if we haven't used them a lot and we don't have a relationship.
Makes complete sense. And profit's not a dirty word. It's okay to have profit. Now, I'm real curious between the professionally managed and the self-managed. On a single-family home in a C-class neighborhood that's paying $800 a month roughly, and the house doesn't have a ton of renovations, it's just your average old run-of-the-mill house, what would you say on an annual basis by percentage you would tell your owners to budget in for repairs?
I would say probably 20%.
20%.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone has a double where they're bringing in $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, you're going to say $2,000 a year towards just maintenance. But that's because you're using your maintenance company, your management, and everything else. How would that vary to you? Would you also say 20% is a fair amount?
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere between a month and a month and a half for rent.
Okay.
You should budget.
A month to a month and a half. So it's very, very similar for either one of you. All right. So far, the only difference I'm seeing between professionally managed and self-managed is the ability to handle the headaches and want to take the calls directly. That's where I'm seeing so far between you guys. Because the money-wise, it's not seeming super expensive to use a professional manager. It seems very reasonable, actually.
It's really going to depend on who you are. For some people, you're going to save a lot. If you're a guy that if you're local, you can make those connections. You can find the guy that works for beer. You know what? It's going to be a lot less expensive. And I'm not making any statement about you, but
I have people
those people.
I have people that work for beer.
Really,
yeah,
exactly. So
you need those.
But I can't scale
Hey, do the
that,
yard. Here's a six-pack. I'll be back.
I can't scale that, and I have to 1099, and W-2 and all this stuff, and I can't have that liability on scale.
No, and I do get that. That's so true. That your bartering services you have, and it's not. And maybe you're running yours different, but you'll have that tenant that's, going to be a week late. And it's like, well, I'll let you be a week late, but you got to go cut the neighbor's grass.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff goes on, which I'm sure you don't try to juggle cats in your business.
No. And the extra level increases complexity to the point where you can't really do that. Or if you do, you suddenly have to be charging for extra management time. Whereas if you're not necessarily paying yourself hourly to do it,
right,
you don't have to factor that in.
No scalability whatsoever.
I want to mention one thing about owning property in your IRA and your Roth 401k. You are allowed to self-manage in your Roth IRA and your 401k. It's a long case many, many years ago came down. The question is, well, how many can you have in there before you're providing a service without being compensated? So there's a question of how many, and we're not going to debate that today. The point I'm bringing up is you have to be careful who you use in your IRA. You can't use your son to go out and mow yards. You can't use your dad to go out and do repairs. You can use your brother. So you have to be aware of prohibited parties, and that's why I prefer, we were talking about 401k versus the IRA. 401k is much, much more easily forgiving mistakes, where if you do use a prohibited party in your IRA, they could wipe out your whole IRA, make you disperse and pay the tax on it. If you use a prohibited party in your 401k, or if you do a prohibited transaction in your 401k, they pretty much just tell you unwind it and or don't do that again. So it's a much gentler, kinder vehicle for owning real estate.
Yes, definitely. So going back, I want to just kind of digress for a second because we've tossed out this term subs a lot, and I'm sure some of our viewers are saying, "So why are you using subwoofers to work on your property?" So what is a sub?
Well, we're referring to subcontractors, and there's a reason they call them contractors, because you really have to be careful. And I know you've used some in the past that have burned you, they burn me. Basically, that's why I said they want to vet them so they make sure they're going to do the job that they've been hired to do. So you do have to be careful, but once you get a good working relationship with a few of the bigger ones, they're very nice to have. For example, we use the same guy to do all our roofs. I call him, I text him, I give him an address. He does it. 3 days later, I get an invoice. It's clean, simple.
Perfect.
That's a good job.
Yes, I think living in the day and age where we are with text messaging, life is so much better because you're building a digital record of your conversation saying, I will pay you $300 to do this on this day, go there, get it done, and you have records. So that does help a lot.
Right.
Well, let's talk about money. We all love the topic of money, and that is what a rental property is all about, is collecting the cash from your tenants or the checks or however it is. How does the collection process go with professional management? Are you around knocking on doors, chewing a cigar, and trying to pick up cash, or how's it working?
I've tried about everything, and I can say that no, not currently. We don't bring guns and knock on doors. So I think the biggest collection starts with selecting the right person. I think you'd agree on
Absolutely.
that. You can't. We don't have the ability to actually reach into somebody's account and, believe it or not, I have people calling me, owners, saying, "Hey, can't you just, just go and get the money?" It's like, well, they haven't agreed to pay me yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, it starts with proper screening. And then for us, like, the Ohio Revised Code dictates a monthly collection cycle. So I know some people like to be very creative and do like a weekly thing and do all these things. There's certain courses and stuff that teach very creative ways. But the second that you start messing with the Ohio law and how they dictate a collection cycle, you're going to push back your collections by a month because you can't start till the next month if you collected a little bit. So there's a lot of nuances to it, and we could probably teach a whole 5-hour course on that. But I will say that as far as the monthly cycle goes, we're always mailing the tenant 5 days before the first of the month. We're emailing them and saying, "Hey, your rent's due. Just remember." We've also removed all grace period. For us, it's due on the 1st, period. Yeah. We charge a late fee on day 2. And then on day 5, we're emailing out a 3-day notice, which is the prerequisite to actually file an eviction. Now, I saw you just shake your head. You're like, can't do that.
You're not mailing out a 3-day notice. Right?
We email out a 3-day notice. It's not actually, you can't actually use that to file in court.
Okay.
That's email, because that's not actually a legal
Method of delivery.
A legal delivery.
Yeah.
But what it does do is it's like a shot over the bow. It's a warning, because the next day we're delivering that in person.
Okay.
And usually 20% of the people, even like in C-class neighborhoods, have not paid on that by that time. Then we charge them when we deliver it. We say, if we come out to your house, you're paying a big fee. So we're trying to use every method we can to get them to pay sooner. We try to evict on the 15th of the month if they haven't.
That's interesting. I like that idea. Do you want to tell them why you no longer have a grace period on your rental agreement or in oral agreement? Or you want me to tell you why? Then to tell you why.
Why don't you tell?
Well,
I feel a few reasons.
You got to remember, landlords and tenants are battleground is in the eviction court. So a couple smart, or not so smart, judges in Akron brought up this thing. Well, isn't the late fee? Aren't you really giving them a grace period? If you charge a late fee after 5 days, aren't you really giving them a grace period that they can pay late after the 5th? And so they've construed now that 5 day period, if you're going to charge them a late fee after that, the judges are construing that as a 5-day grace period. So you can't give them a 3-day eviction notice in that first 5 days. So that's why I'm sure you've stopped doing it. So now we used to have a 5-day and a 10-day. Now we've cut that down to a 5-day because I'm not going to give anybody a 3-day notice in the first 5 days anyway. Hell, I would have trouble getting to their house in the first 5 days if they haven't sent it in. So after the 5th, then they are subject to getting a 3-day notice. And it depends on if it's a tenant that's been there 3-4 years versus a tenant that's just moved in. You're much quicker to drop the hammer on a brand new tenant than you are. Somebody goes, look, my check's late. I lost my card. I don't get it to the 15th. Okay, you can go a little bit of time when they got a little bit of track record with you. If it's a new tenant, first month, and they're giving you some baloney excuse, then you got to make a call. Say, look, that's fine. Pay me on the 15th, but here's a 3-day. And remember, if you don't pay me on the 16th, 15th, 16th, we're going to file the eviction. So you've got, when you're self-managed, you got a little bit more feel to the tenants than you do when you're, a third party in between you.
That is true. And for us, we also have to worry when the more we have fair housing. So you start giving one person an exception, suddenly that can be construed. Yeah. The average, we've been in and out of fair housing court a couple times because unfortunately it's a whole bounty system. They've basically privatized justice. It's a terrible thing. It's literally the wild, wild west. Average fine is $5,000. So you got to be a little bit careful on that. We're having to dial down, but I believe that we should try to vary things a little bit based on situation. But we've had to be more careful about that.
30 years, I've never been in fair housing court. Because I'm fair.
Oh boy, here we go. Knock on wood. Someone's going next week.
Yeah, I know.
So Andy, now you have a multitude of people you work for. Are you working for more individuals that have 1 or 2 houses, or more hedge funds and corporations, people that have 100 houses?
That's a good question. Every management company has a specialty, right? And you should look for people that are going to serve your niche well. I focus on small single families, small multifamilies and single families, and in terms of the investor makeup, the average number of houses owned is 2. So as many as 20, as little as 1. And we're happy to work with any size.
This leads me to my next question. Because you're dealing with so many people that have 1 or 2 houses, you're dealing with so many different personalities and so many different expectations of people saying, let's evict faster, let's do this, let's handle it this way. How strict are you with these people to stay on your protocol to keep the business flowing, to say, okay, hey, we're going to do this, but we're doing it my way? Or how much do you bend to them? Because Gary's got it easy. Gary just does what he wants to do. He's the Wild West.
It's interesting you would say that. So I have gotten way more stricter, because when you start out, you don't even always conceive of the complexity of managing everybody's way. And the only way for me to actually manage for the amount of money that I manage for is we have to have a way of doing things, and then we pretty much stick to that way. I've had people call up and say, well, you need to change the way you pay, and I want you to change this, and how you authorize payments. And I'm like, I have a staff of 15 people, okay? How am I going to communicate to them all these things in the flow? And if I commit to that, I won't be able to meet that promise. I want to be able to make a specific promise and then deliver that promise. And I would say to anybody who's thinking like, well, I want them to do it this way, and I'm going to have them. If your management company agrees to that, you need to fire them, because there's no way that they can have more than one client and then do exactly all of your ways of doing things. It means they have no process and they have no system.
Right.
You need to get rid of them.
Well, the way I'm sure Gary does this, I'm sure some, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're not that techie on this, but with the new apps out there, all these instant ways to send cash. Like I pay a lot of my contractors using my phone. It's like you get done, boom, send it, hits your account right away, without name dropping these companies to give them free promotions. How do you feel that's impacting the professional management world? Because that's one of the hardest thing to do is to get the person that can collect the money. But now you could be in California, own a house in Cleveland, and the tenant can just send you money by hitting a button on their phone. And then you could call your contractor just running around there. Do you feel that's hurt your business? And how do you feel about this new digital format to collect money versus knocking on doors?
We don't use a lot of that. We use it sometimes. We actually, some tenants give us their card. We go down and take the money out of their ATM because they're older, infirmed.
Oh my god!
And
Hold on. You have. I got.
Should we cut that out? We cut
pause.
that out.
No, you can leave this in there. This is. I've heard everything in my life, but I've never heard that.
Oh,
a tenant gives you their ATM card, probably because you're taking all of their money anyhow, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Or they'll drive them to the ATM and they put in their card and give us a receipt in the card. I mean, we do crazy things like that.
Gangster.
But you have to gangster.
That's something you can do. That's something you can do.
Exactly.
So Andy, do you do this as well? Do you have people mail your ATM cards in and
Heck
text
no.
you the
Mail
PIN
them,
numbers?
no.
We give you certain ways of paying, and we fine you if you don't pay it the right way. So what we want is the way that's going to come quickest to the account, and it's going to fit right in with our accounting, so there's no amount of human error. And so we have an online portal. They can see their entire statement and everything, and it's all there all the time, and they can pay for free that way. But if they want to send us a check, if they want anything else, it's like a $10 fee or something like that. It's some kind of fee.
Some sort of fee. All right. How about getting the tenants into the properties? Let's talk about the screening processes because, again, Gary, you're your own man. You can, however the wind blows, if you like someone's personality, you can just forgo their credit score, job history, whatever, if you just like the person. And Andy, you say that in your world, you're the boss and you're not going to adhere to what the wants are of your clients, to a point of saying, well, we'll take a 550 score and this guy wants a 640 score. How do you handle that?
So, first of all, the fact that we do handle it and we handle it completely gives some protection from a fair housing for our clients, okay?
Yes.
Because they don't have to worry that they didn't even know anything about whether they were in a protected class or not. We have a tiered system. So it is definitely a system because otherwise I have to be involved in everything because I'm the boss and everything falls on me if things go wrong. So it's because you can't use the same criteria that you have for a property that's worth $800,000 versus a C property. I don't go below C, so I'm not going to do a D or F. But you can't use the same criteria for an A versus a C. You just can't. Because in an A property, you don't ever want to have somebody that they can do as much damage as the property is, right? So you don't want to take any kind of risk that they can do $800,000 in damage to this house. At the same time with the C property, and you can find people that have 800 credit scores looking to apply for an A property. Whereas for a C property, we find maybe 1 in 15, maybe 1 in 20 apps are over a 600. Okay?
Wow.
So we have to find ways of qualifying them that are different. So we have different tiers for different properties. It's just going to be a higher risk. You have to understand that. Then we try to offset that risk by increasing the deposit if they fall below certain risk levels in terms of like in the tier. So we have like basically a separate grid for each class of property.
I think I need to pause and do a definition time here. So we are, because we're all seasoned investors and we're like A property, C, B, all this other stuff, there might be some people who are just completely lost. So Gary, do you want to explain?
I don't know what an A property is. I don't got any.
They do very
Other than my house.
All right, let's say the A property is what you live in. The D
Okay.
properties are what your tenants live in. So they're in between there.
Well, I'm hoping
Completely
like
joking.
I'm hoping like my
Joke.
properties. I hope like something like C properties because most of them are pretty much all the same, and that's why we don't really do credit reports. We look at criminal history, check the Akron Summit County courts, and we check that for evictions. We check that for criminal history. The reason why is we kind of, like he said, we insulate ourselves from the damage by getting more down because we want lease option tenants. So we somewhat insulate ourselves by getting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 down on a house. Then we also look at their job history. You know, if they're both working, they're stable, it's got a good career path, whatever. And then that's how we get them in. And then, with any tenants, I've had the best tenants go the absolute worst, and I've got the ones I thought, what the hell are we doing renting to him? And they're still there 4 years later. So I wish there was a better way. I really do. But if you own manage, you get to meet him, talk to him a little bit. You want to do improvements, just get a hold of me because, you're rent to own. And I feel I do get a better class of tenants rent to own. And like I said, if they make it 4 years, and then can't get refinanced. That's my program's a 4-year lease option, and then we apply anywhere from 150 to 250 rent towards principal. If they can't get refinanced after 4 years, and they made all their payments, I look to put them on a land contract for a 10 or 15-year land contract because, as I told you earlier, most of my stuff is financed. It's paid off in 4 years. If I got a good tenant, I don't want him going anywhere just because he can get financed. Because to me, it's all about cash flow.
Gotcha. Well, I can tell you one definitive thing that I'm seeing here as far as the professional managed versus self-managed is the ability to change course. Because I'm sure that in your day-to-day, you're not taking tenants saying, how about doing a land contract or a lease option or let's work this out.
It does come up a little bit. But we have a very specific renewal strategy. So sometimes people will ask, and we're trying to work in some flexibility. I'm a licensed real estate broker, so we have agents that sell property and things like that and staff. So we can sometimes work deals out. When it comes to, am I going to move or I'm going to stay? There's that conversation you have around renewals.
Right.
So when we do that, we actually can bring some of that in, but it's definitely not near as flexible.
Yeah.
And I might also add that when you actually do like a strategy where you lease option, there's a certain amount of management that happens because of that it reduces your management.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I actually think that it can be a very good thing.
Absolutely. Well, but just like you said, 1 in 20's got a score of a 600, which is, when I was doing that, I found out, I was like, why bother? Because if I wanted a credit score, I wouldn't rent to the guy anyway. So if I like the other things about him and that's the only thing holding me back,
all right,
it's a crapshoot anyway.
All right, here's what I want to do. I want to have Gary tell me why you think that it is unnecessary to have a professional property manager and why you choose to do it yourself. And then I want you to tell him why you think that's crazy. And then I want the bouncers to step in. Okay. No, it's very civil. No, but
let's take the gloves off.
But no, it's not about fighting or it's about disagreeing, but it's about there's people at home watching. They're truly torn between this because it's sounding like, gosh, I could go either way and it's going to work great. So why would you not use professional property management?
Well, it's not that I would not use them. I mean, there's certainly a place and time. If you're a California investor, you've got to have, buying in Akron, Ohio, which we have a lot of, you really need one because to try to do that by yourself from California would be ridiculous. Right. I know because I've done it from Akron, Ohio to Biloxi, Mississippi, and that was ridiculous. And I got my hat handed to me because you don't know, contractors and using out-of-state contractors, and so believe me, I've tried it that way. I would only do self-management if you can drive to the house within 30 minutes, and I don't even go to Canton anymore because that's over 15 minutes. I can get to every place in Akron. So there's a time and a place for them, and like I said, the only time I would really self-manage is if you can actively touch the property.
So why would you not use a manager in your own market?
Well, because I can get there myself. I have my contacts. I can get there myself. Most of my tenants are all, we probably, till this last month here, we have been running, we have 200 units, and 4 months ago we had 3 vacancies. Now, this past month, for some reason, we had about 8 or 9 evictions. But, our renewal's pretty good. So we really haven't had to go out and look for too many new tenants. So that's why I wouldn't use it.
So you think that you could just do a better job.
Right. And a cheaper job.
And a cheaper job. Why would you say, even if I live in Johnsontown, wherever the heck it is, why should I still use a manager?
Well, like anything, you have to make a value. There's 2 sides of the valuation. What's my cost? What's my return? So what's your time worth? And sometimes you're making a judgment like, well, I want to learn something. So we talked about that scenario. But a lot of times people do get to the point where they're like, you know what, I hate this. I'm going to hand this to you. And again, I always have a conversation because there's something called sweat equity withdrawal. When you have been putting sweat equity into a property for years, and then suddenly you have to start paying for it.
Yes.
For someone else to do it. Sometimes people are like, can't you just, put some duct tape on it? Just put some duct tape over that broken stack. I know there's crap dropping everywhere. So people start to freak out when they have that change. As long as they understand that this is different, it's not going to be just like you did it. And you know what? If you had a lot of delayed maintenance, we're going to come in, we're doing an entire inspection. As long as you understand, then I think it can really work out for anybody. But if you were just barely making it, you had these D-level properties, the expenses will eat you alive. And that you probably should sell it or keep on doing things the way, plodding through and doing everything yourself, you know?
Andy, since you've been in this, how many years now?
About 20 years.
About 20 years. What freedoms has it given you? What has real estate done for you in your life?
You know, honestly, I think the biggest thing it's done is made me a better person. You know, it's given me opportunities to grow, to learn, to experience life with different people. Bought quite a few rentals, and I've also, I always use it to buy my own house. You know, so I had this incredible deal, foreclosure I purchased that just got a steal, and it's an amazing house for like free, almost, not quite.
No.
Yeah. But, it's hard to go on about like all it's done, but it's been my entire career. So
I agree with that too. I concur that you can get some great deals for yourselves just by the amount of knowledge and connections that you've made. So if I'm going to give a takeaway from you two guys being on here, I would say the one takeaway is that the professional manager is great. If you manage your manager, you make sure that whomever you're dealing with, you're in line with each other. Because Andy's not going to sway and be your personal assistant, but make sure that the expectations are there and you're a good fit before you tie the knot together here. And if you can stomach it and you don't mind taking the phone calls and you live close enough, the Gary effect is good to get in there and really bootstrap it and do it yourself. And it would not hurt a bit if you're close enough to know what it takes before you hand it off to a manager, so you're a little more sympathetic towards them when they're telling you some of the problems that are going on. So guys, as always, thanks so much for being on the show. You're a wealth of knowledge. I mean, it's amazing to hear how well both of you are doing, and we loved having you. And you've been watching the Real Estate Investor Roundtable. I'm your host, Rob the House Guy. And remember, nothing works unless you do.